I caught my sister, 30F, and mother, 56F, trying on my preserved wedding dress from my first marriage, but that's not even the worst part. I later discovered they'd been secretly communicating with my abusive ex-husband for months and planning a surprise reunion because they think my current boyfriend is boring and I'd be better off going back to my ex. The wedding dress I kept as a symbol of my survival was just the beginning of a betrayal so deep I'm still struggling to process it. AITA for cutting off my family after what they've done? 3 years ago, I, 28F, escaped what I can only describe as an emotionally abusive marriage to Vincent, 33M. On paper, he was the perfect catch, successful businessman, charming at social gatherings, generous with gifts. Behind closed doors, he was controlling, manipulative, and had a talent for making me doubt my own reality. It took therapy, support from friends, and hitting an emotional rock bottom before I found the strength to leave. When I left, I took very little with me. Surprisingly though, I kept my wedding dress. Not out of sentimentality or any hope of reconciliation, but as a reminder of my own strength. That dress represented not just the worst period of my life, but also the moment I finally chose myself. I had it professionally preserved and stored it at my mother's house since my apartment was too small. For the past year and a half, I've been dating Theo, 29M. He's kind, supportive, and respects my boundaries in a way Vincent never did. Our relationship lacks the dramatic highs and lows I experienced with Vincent, and that stability has been healing for me. Theo knows about my past and has been incredibly patient as I work through my lingering trust issues. Last weekend, I went to my parents' house to help my mother prepare for an upcoming family gathering. I needed to grab some photos from the attic storage, where my preserved wedding dress was also kept. When I got to the attic, I immediately noticed something was wrong. The preservation box had been opened, and the dress was hastily repackaged. If you know anything about preserved wedding dresses, you know they're sealed with specific instructions not to open unless you're ready to risk damaging the fabric. I carefully took the dress out and noticed several issues: makeup stains on the neckline, a small tear in the delicate lace overlay, and the unmistakable scent of someone else's perfume. I was confused more than angry at this point. Why would anyone take out my wedding dress? As I was examining the damage, I heard my mother and sister Natalie coming up the stairs. They were speaking in hushed tones, but I could make out snippets of their conversation. "Don't think we should tell her Vincent called again," my sister was saying. "She'll find out eventually at the gathering. The surprise will be worth it," my mother replied. They froze when they saw me standing there, holding the damaged dress. "What's this about Vincent calling?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "And why was someone wearing my wedding dress?" They exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret before my mother spoke. "Oh honey, Natalie was just curious about your dress. She's been thinking about wedding styles since she started dating Richard. That doesn't explain why it smells like your perfume too, Mom. Or why you're talking about Vincent calling." My sister stepped forward, rolling her eyes. "It's not a big deal, Ellie. We were just looking at it, and Mom wanted to see how it compared to her own dress. You're overreacting." "And Vincent?" I pressed. "He called the house looking for you a while back," my mother said dismissively. "It was nothing important." Something in their demeanor felt off. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes, and Natalie was fidgeting with her bracelet, something she does when she's lying. "Why would he call the house when he has my number?" I asked. "How should we know? Maybe he lost your contact information," Natalie snapped. "God, you're making such a big deal out of nothing." I didn't push further at that moment. Instead, I carefully repacked the dress and told them I'd take it with me back to my apartment. My mother protested, saying it was safer in their attic, but I insisted. Throughout dinner, there was an undercurrent of tension that everyone pretended not to notice, including my father Roger, 58M, who buried himself in discussions about his golf game. That night at my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. I called my sister under the pretense of apologizing for overreacting about the dress. During our conversation, I heard a notification sound from her phone. "Was that Vincent texting you?" I asked suddenly. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "Why would you think that?" she finally asked, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "Just a feeling. Is there something I should know, Natalie?" "You're being paranoid, Ellie. I have to go." She hung up abruptly. That's when I decided to do something I'm not proud of. The next day, while everyone was at work, I went back to my parents' house using my spare key. I told myself I was just going to check if there was anything else of mine that had been tampered with. In my mother's study, I noticed her iPad was unlocked on the desk. A message notification appeared on the screen from a contact saved as V. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But something in me needed to know the truth. The message thread with V went back months. As I scrolled, my stomach twisted into knots. My mother and Vincent had been in regular contact. She had been updating him on my life, sending him pictures from family gatherings I attended, telling him about Theo. Even worse, they had been planning what they called a surprise reunion at the upcoming family gathering. My mother had invited Vincent, telling him I had been asking about him, a complete lie, and that I was settling for less with Theo. "Ellie doesn't know what's best for her," read one message from my mother. "This Theo is nice enough, but he's so boring compared to you. No ambition, no excitement. She needs someone who can give her the life she deserves." Vincent's responses were exactly what I would expect: charming, manipulative, playing on my mother's concerns while positioning himself as the solution. He referred to our divorce as a misunderstanding and claimed he had grown from the experience. I felt physically ill. Not only had they violated my privacy by trying on my wedding dress, but they had also been actively conspiring with my abusive ex-husband behind my back. They were planning to ambush me with his presence, dismissing both my current relationship and the valid reasons I had left Vincent in the first place. I checked my sister's messages next and found she was equally complicit. She and my mother had been coordinating this plan for weeks, discussing how to get me to attend the gathering without suspicion, speculating about how grateful I would eventually be for their interference. "Thea was such a downgrade," my sister had written. "At least Vincent kept things interesting." I took screenshots of everything and sent them to myself before leaving. Back at my apartment, I broke down. All the progress I had made in therapy, all the stability I had built in my life after Vincent, felt suddenly precarious. The people I should have been able to trust most were undermining my choices and exposing me to someone who had caused me significant trauma. I didn't confront them immediately. Instead, I called my therapist for an emergency session and talked through what had happened. She helped me see that this wasn't my fault and that I needed to protect myself, regardless of family expectations. That night, Theo came over and I showed him everything. Unlike my family, who had dismissed the emotional abuse I suffered, Theo was furious on my behalf. "This is your decision," he said after I finished explaining. "But whatever you choose, I'm here for you. If you want to confront them, I'll go with you. If you want to skip the gathering entirely, I understand." For the first time since discovering the messages, I felt like I could breathe. This was why I was with Theo. He respected my agency in a way Vincent, and apparently my family, never had. I decided to send a group text to my mother, father, and sister. "I know about the surprise reunion you've been planning with Vincent. I've seen the messages. I will not be attending any gathering where he is present, and we need to have a serious conversation about boundaries and respect. Until then, I need some space." The response was immediate and chaotic. My mother called multiple times, leaving voicemails that shifted from denial to anger to tearful pleas. My sister sent defensive texts accusing me of snooping and claiming they only wanted what was best for me. My father, predictably, sent a single message asking everyone to calm down and discuss this rationally. What hurt the most wasn't their anger at being caught, but the fact that not once in their responses did they acknowledge how their actions might have affected me. There was no recognition of the trauma Vincent had caused or why springing him on me would be harmful. It's been 3 days, and I've maintained my distance. The family gathering is this weekend, and I've made it clear I won't be attending. My phone continues to blow up with messages ranging from guilt-tripping to outright manipulation. Last night, my mother texted that I was tearing the family apart over ancient history. Is 3 years of healing from emotional abuse really ancient history? Am I overreacting by feeling so betrayed? The wedding dress itself I could maybe forgive as curiosity, though the damage still upsets me. But the secret communication with Vincent, the planned ambush, the dismissal of my current relationship. It feels like a violation I can't move past. So, Reddit. AITA for cutting off contact with my family after discovering they've been secretly communicating with my abusive ex-husband and planning to surprise me with his presence? Or am I justified in feeling like this is an unforgivable breach of trust? First, update. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. Your validation and advice have been incredibly helpful during this difficult time. To those who shared similar experiences with family members dismissing abuse, thank you for making me feel less alone. After reading your comments, I realized I needed to confront my family directly about everything, with evidence in hand. I scheduled a meeting at a neutral coffee shop, someplace public where emotions couldn't escalate too dramatically. I invited my mother, father, and sister. I also asked my best friend Olivia, 28F, to sit at a nearby table as moral support. They seemed surprised when I pulled out printed copies of their text conversations with Vincent. My mother's face paled, and my sister immediately became defensive. "You had no right to go through our phones," Natalie snapped. "And you had no right to go behind my back to contact the man who emotionally abused me for years," I countered. "Let's not pretend we're on equal moral ground here." My father looked genuinely shocked as he read through the messages. Apparently, he hadn't been aware of the extent of their communication with Vincent, though he admitted he knew they'd been in touch occasionally. "We were just trying to help," my mother insisted, her voice quivering. "Vincent has changed. He's been through therapy, he has a new perspective on life. He reached out to us because he genuinely regrets how he treated you. And you believed him without question? After everything I told you about our marriage?" She hesitated before answering. "Honey, I think you might have exaggerated some things. Every marriage has rough patches." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Exaggerated? I came to you crying multiple times. I told you about the gaslighting, the isolation, how he monitored my spending and friendships. But he was so generous with you," my mother continued. "The house, the vacations, the jewelry. Not every man can provide that kind of life." That's when it clicked. My mother wasn't dismissing the abuse, she was prioritizing material comfort over my emotional well-being. I glanced at my sister, who was staring intently at her coffee. "And what's your excuse, Natalie? Why would you participate in this?" My sister looked up, and I was surprised to see tears in her eyes. "Theo is nice, Ellie. But he's just ordinary. Vincent had plans, ambition. He was going somewhere. So I should trade my happiness and safety for a more impressive boyfriend, resume?" I asked incredulously. "It's not just that," my mother interjected. "Vincent has been asking about you for months. He still loves you. Don't you think you owe it to yourself to at least talk to him? See if there's anything worth salvaging?" I took a deep breath. "No, I don't. And the fact that you would even suggest that shows how little you understand about emotional abuse and its impact." My father finally spoke up. "Diana, Natalie, I think you need to listen to Ellie. If she says Vincent was abusive, we should believe her." My mother shot him an irritated look. "You don't understand, Roger. You've never understood what's best for her. What's best for me is for the people I love to respect my boundaries," I said firmly. "I need to know why you went behind my back like this. And don't say it was for my own good." After some pressing, the truth came out. Vincent had been in touch with my mother first, shortly after I started dating Theo. He portrayed himself as a changed man who still loved me deeply. My mother, who had always been impressed by Vincent's charm and financial success, was receptive. Over time, he convinced her that my leaving him was a mistake, that with some gentle nudging I might reconsider. What shocked me most was learning that Vincent had been subtly financially supporting my parents for months. My father's business had been struggling, and Vincent had invested a significant amount, positioning it as helping the family but clearly using it as leverage. "So you sold me out," I said quietly. "You were willing to throw me back to my abuser for money." "It wasn't like that," my father protested weakly, but his eyes told a different story. My sister then revealed something that made everything worse. She pulled out her phone and showed me Instagram messages where she and Vincent had been discussing me. There were screenshots of my social media posts, pictures of me and Theo taken without my knowledge, and detailed discussions about my daily routines. "He seemed so invested in your happiness," Natalie explained. "He wanted to know everything about your life, how you were doing." "That's not investment, Natalie. That's surveillance," I said, feeling chilled to the bone. "This is exactly what he did during our marriage. He's getting you to spy on me." The meeting ended with my mother still defending their actions and my father trying unsuccessfully to mediate. Only my sister seemed to be having second thoughts, especially after I walked her through how Vincent's behavior matched textbook patterns of abusers trying to regain control. As we were leaving, my mother delivered an ultimatum that stunned even my father. If you can't even give Vincent a chance to apologize in person, then maybe you need to reconsider your place in this family. My father immediately protested, but the damage was done. I walked out of the coffee shop feeling both heartbroken and, strangely, relieved. The lines were now clearly drawn. When I got home, I found several missed calls from a blocked number. Then a text came through from an unknown number. Ellie, it's Vincent. Your mother told me you found out about our communication before I could explain myself. I'm only trying to make amends. I've changed. Please give me a chance to show you. I miss what we had. I showed the message to Theo, who suggested I block the number immediately and document everything in case I needed a restraining order later. As we were discussing this, another text came through from my sister. I'm sorry about today. There's something else you should know. Vincent bought the apartment building 2 blocks from yours 3 months ago. He told Mom he wanted to be close by when you came to your senses. I thought you should know. I'm starting to think you might be right about him. This revelation sent me into a panic attack. The idea that Vincent had been strategically positioning himself physically close to me while using my family to gather information was terrifying. Theo helped me through the attack and then insisted I stay at his place for a few days until we figured out next steps. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Vincent with a subject line, "What your family isn't telling you." Against Theo's advice, I opened it. Inside was financial information about my parents' business, showing substantial investments from Vincent, along with a line that made my blood run cold. Your parents need me, Ellie. Their business would collapse without my support. But all of that could be solved so easily if you just talk to me. One conversation, that's all I'm asking. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and called to make an appointment. Then I texted my father the screenshot with a simple message, "Is this true?" His response came hours later, "I'm sorry, Ellie. I never wanted you involved in the business problems. Your mother thought Vincent's help was the answer to everything. I should have stopped it. I've decided to move forward with a restraining order against Vincent. I'm also looking into temporary relocation options, possibly staying with Theo until I can find a new apartment in a different area. Theo has been incredible through all this, offering support without making me feel dependent on him. My sister has been texting daily, seeming to waver between defending our mother and expressing concern about Vincent's behavior. Last night, she sent a message that has me worried about more than just my own situation. Vincent asked a lot of questions about me too, not just you. He's been calling me separately from Mom. I think I might have misunderstood his intentions with all of this. I'm not sure what to make of that, but it's raised warning flags. I've asked her to meet me alone to talk further, away from our mother's influence. The family gathering is tomorrow, and I've made it absolutely clear I won't be attending. Vincent will apparently still be there as my mother's special guest. My father claims he'll make sure Vincent leaves him alone, but I don't trust his ability to stand up to either Vincent or my mother at this point. I'm scheduled to see my therapist again tomorrow to process all of this. Theo has suggested we plan something special for ourselves instead of dwelling on the gathering I'm missing, a small act of reclaiming the day that means a lot to me. I'll update again after I speak with my sister. I have a feeling there's more to this story that I still don't know. Second update. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and advice on my last update. Many of you expressed concern about my sister's cryptic message regarding Vincent, and unfortunately, your instincts were right. I met with Natalie at a small park away from both our homes. She was visibly nervous, constantly checking her phone and looking around as if expecting someone to appear. When I asked her about her text message, she broke down completely. "There's something I never told you," she said between sobs. "Something that happened while you were still married to Vincent." What she revealed next made me question everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Apparently, during the last year of my marriage to Vincent, he had begun inappropriately texting Natalie. It started innocently enough, birthday wishes, family gathering coordination, but gradually evolved into late-night messages, compliments, and what she described as emotional support during a time when she was struggling with her own relationship. "I convinced myself it was innocent," she explained. "He was my brother-in-law, and you were always talking about how controlling he was. I thought I was seeing a side of him you didn't get to see." The messages eventually escalated to secret meetings for coffee or drinks when Vincent told her I was being difficult or needed space. He would confide in her about our marriage problems, carefully crafting a narrative that made me sound unreasonable while positioning himself as a devoted husband trying his best with a troubled wife. "He made me feel special," Natalie admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "Like I understood him in a way you couldn't. We never physically did anything, but I can see now he was grooming me. Creating a wedge between us?" I sat in stunned silence as she continued. "When you left him, he disappeared from my life too. I was actually hurt by that. Then 6 months ago, he reached out like no time had passed. Said he'd respected my space but couldn't stop thinking about our connection. He told me he still loved you, but he also had feelings for me that confused him." My sister wiped her tears and finally looked at me directly. "I'm so ashamed, Ellie. I think I was jealous of you. Of the life you had with him, even though you told me it wasn't what it seemed. When he came back into our lives, part of me wanted to help reunite you two so he'd be back in my life too. But another part, I think I wanted him for myself." The realization hit her as she said it out loud. "That's why I was so invested in this reunion plan. I told myself it was for you, but it was really for me. And Mom was so easy to convince because she's always been dazzled by Vincent's money." She showed me recent texts from Vincent that confirmed everything. He'd been playing a complex game, telling my mother he wanted to reconcile with me while simultaneously leading my sister to believe they had a special bond that might become something more when the time was right. "The night before your family meeting, he called me," Natalie continued. "He knew you'd found out about everything and told me exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself. He said if I didn't help him, he'd tell Mom about our messages. Some of them were inappropriate. I was scared. But you're telling me now," I pointed out. She nodded. "After seeing how he manipulated all of us, I realized he's never going to stop. And yesterday, after the family gathering you missed, he cornered me in Dad's study. He tried to kiss me, said now that you were out of the picture, we didn't have to pretend anymore." My blood ran cold. "What did you do?" "I pushed him away and left. Mom saw me upset and asked what happened, but when I tried to tell her, she refused to believe me. Said I was making it up because I felt guilty about betraying you. This explained so much about my sister's behavior, the jealousy, the undermining of my relationship with Theo, the fluctuating support. Vincent had been manipulating her vulnerabilities just as he had done with me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Natalie said. I don't deserve it. But you need to know what he's capable of. He's not just trying to get you back, he's trying to control everyone connected to you. I took her hand. I'm angry with you, Natalie. Incredibly hurt. But I also understand manipulation and how Vincent operates. This is what he does, isolates people and turns them against each other. After our conversation, I drove straight to my parents' house. I needed to confront my mother with this new information. When I arrived, I found my father alone, looking defeated. Your mother went to meet Vincent for lunch, he explained. To discuss next steps after yesterday's gathering. I showed him the texts Natalie had shared with me. As he read them, his expression transformed from confusion to horror to rage. I've been a coward, he said finally. I let financial problems cloud my judgment. I didn't want to believe what you told us about Vincent because accepting it meant admitting I failed to protect you. For the first time in my adult life, I saw my father cry. I'm going to fix this, Ellie. Starting with getting Vincent's money out of our business, whatever it takes. We were still talking when my mother returned. She froze when she saw us sitting together, clearly having been in a serious conversation. What's going on? She asked warily. My father stood up. Diana, we need to talk about Vincent. About everything. There's nothing to discuss, she said dismissively. Vincent is rightfully upset that Ellie refuses to even speak with him. He's been nothing but generous to this family. I stepped forward and played her a voice recording Natalie had sent me, Vincent explicitly discussing his feelings for my sister while also plotting to win me back. My mother's face went through a series of emotions, disbelief, anger, betrayal, and finally, devastating realization. She sank into a chair. He told me you were exaggerating, she whispered. That you had always been prone to drama and misinterpreting his intentions. He said you needed guidance to recognize what was good for you. That's textbook gaslighting, Mom. It's what he did to me for years. We talked for hours. There were tears, accusations, defensive posturing, and eventually, the beginnings of understanding. My mother's pride made a full admission of wrongdoing difficult, but by the end of the conversation, she agreed to cut contact with Vincent. The business, she began, worry creasing her forehead. We'll figure it out, my father said firmly. Without him. I left their house emotionally drained but with a glimmer of hope that my family might eventually heal from Vincent's manipulation. That hope was short-lived. The next morning, I received a text from Vincent. I hear you've been turning your family against me with more of your delusions. This could have been so easy, Ellie. All you had to do was talk to me. Now we have to do this the hard way. I immediately forwarded the message to my lawyer, who confirmed our court date for the restraining order was set for the following week. Theo insisted on staying with me at all times until then, even working remotely from my apartment to ensure I wasn't alone. 2 days later, despite having no legal right to be there, Vincent showed up at a small birthday dinner my friend Olivia was hosting for me at her apartment. He charmed his way past the building security by claiming to be delivering flowers. When he walked into the dining room, conversation stopped. Theo immediately stood up, positioning himself between Vincent and me. You need to leave, Theo said calmly but firmly. Vincent ignored him completely, focusing on me. Ellie, I just need 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I have nothing to say to you, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Please leave before we call the police. Your mother invited me to your birthday dinner, he said, as if that justified his presence. There must have been a miscommunication. Olivia, bless her, had already discreetly called building security, who arrived moments later. As they escorted him out, Vincent maintained his composure, smiling apologetically to the other guests as if this were all an unfortunate misunderstanding. Once he was gone, I broke down. The confidence I'd felt in his presence evaporated, replaced by the familiar anxiety that had characterized our marriage. Theo held me while I cried, and my friends formed a protective circle around us. Later that night, I received multiple texts from my mother asking why I had been rude to Vincent at his attempt to make peace. When I called to tell her he had shown up uninvited and that she had no right to tell him about my private birthday dinner, she seemed genuinely confused. I never told him about any dinner, she insisted. We haven't spoken since you were at the house. Either she was lying, or Vincent had other sources of information about my life. Either possibility was disturbing. The next day, I received an anonymous email with a document attached, a copy of the deed showing Vincent's ownership of my apartment building. Not just a building near mine as my sister had said, but my actual building. He had become my landlord without my knowledge 3 months earlier. I made the decision then to move in with Theo temporarily while looking for a new place to live. I also filed a police report documenting Vincent's pattern of behavior, which strengthened my case for the restraining order. The court date arrived, and to my surprise, both my sister and father showed up to support me. My mother was noticeably absent. Vincent appeared with an expensive lawyer who tried to paint me as an unstable ex-wife imagining harassment where there was only concern. However, the evidence was overwhelming: the texts, the apartment building purchase, the uninvited appearance at my birthday dinner, and witness statements from friends who had observed his behavior. The judge granted the temporary restraining order, but as we left the courthouse, Vincent managed to pass close enough to whisper, "This changes nothing. We're connected for life, Ellie." My father overheard and finally did what he should have done years ago. He confronted Vincent directly. "Stay away from my daughters," he said, his voice low but intense. "Both of them. I know what you've been doing, and it stops now." Vincent smiled that cold smile I knew so well. "Roger, you should be careful about making threats. We both know your business can't survive without my investment." "I'd rather lose everything than let you hurt my family again," my father replied. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had my dad back. The days following the restraining order were tense. I was essentially hiding out at Theo's apartment, afraid to return to mine knowing Vincent owned the building. My mother still wasn't speaking to me, but my father called daily with updates. He and my sister were working to disentangle our family business from Vincent's influence, which was proving difficult but not impossible. I continued seeing my therapist twice weekly, working through not only the renewed trauma from Vincent's reappearance in my life but also the complex feelings of betrayal from my family. She helped me understand that while I could forgive if I chose to, I didn't have to forget or remove my boundaries. Things came to a head a week later when I received a call from my sister in tears. "You need to come to Mom and Dad's house right now," Natalie sobbed. "Vincent is here, and it's bad." "I can't be anywhere near him," I reminded her. "The restraining order. He's not supposed to be here. He just showed up raging about the business. Dad told him they're buying out his investment, and he lost it. Mom finally sees him for what he is." I called Theo, who insisted on going with me. We also called the police on the way, reporting a potential violation of the restraining order, though technically it didn't cover Vincent being at my parents' house when I wasn't there. When we arrived, we found a scene of chaos. Vincent's normally perfect facade had cracked completely. He was shouting at my father in the living room while my mother and sister huddled together on the staircase, looking shocked and frightened. "You ungrateful bastards," Vincent was saying as we walked in. "After everything I've done for this family, I could have destroyed your pathetic business months ago if I wanted to." He whirled around when he heard us enter, his expression momentarily startled before settling into something calculated. "Ellie," he said, his voice instantly softening. "I'm glad you're here. Maybe you can talk some sense into your father." "You need to leave," I said firmly. "You're violating the restraining order by being in my presence." "You came to me," he pointed out with a smirk. "I was here on legitimate business matters with your parents when you chose to show up." Before I could respond, my mother stood up and walked down the stairs slowly, her eyes never leaving Vincent's face. "I invited my daughter here," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Because I finally see what she's been trying to tell us all along. You're not welcome in this house anymore." Vincent's mask slipped again. "After everything I've given you? The money for your business, the connections, the status? You'd throw that all away because your daughter can't handle a normal relationship?" My mother flinched but held her ground. "My daughter was right about you. We were wrong. Now leave before the police arrive." As if on cue, we heard sirens in the distance. Vincent's expression darkened as he looked at each of us in turn. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "None of you understand what you're doing." He brushed past us toward the door, pausing briefly next to me. "You'll come back," he whispered. "They always do." The police arrived minutes after Vincent left. They took statements from everyone but explained that since he had departed before they arrived and there was limited evidence of direct threats, they could only document the incident as a potential restraining order violation. After they left, an uncomfortable silence fell over the living room. My mother was the first to speak. "I owe you an apology," she said, looking directly at me. "I didn't want to believe you because believing you meant accepting that I had failed you. That I had pushed you toward a man who hurt you, and then dismissed your pain when you tried to tell me." It wasn't a perfect apology, there was still a hint of making it about her feelings, but it was sincere. For my mother, this level of admission was unprecedented. "Why now?" I asked. "What finally convinced you?" She looked down at her hands. "When he came in today, he was different. The charm was gone. I saw the rage, the entitlement, the way he spoke about you like you were property. It was like seeing behind a curtain I didn't even know was there." My father stepped forward and put his arm around my mother. "We've made some terrible mistakes, Ellie. Vincent presented himself as the solution to our financial problems, and we let that cloud our judgment. We chose money over your well-being, and there's no excuse for that." I felt Theo's hand on my back, a gentle, supportive presence. "What happens now?" I asked. "We fight," my father said simply. "We've started the process to buy out Vincent's investment. It will mean downsizing, possibly even remortgaging the house, but we'll be free of him." My sister, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. "And I'll be testifying about his inappropriate behavior toward me if you want to strengthen the restraining order." I saved all the messages. I looked around at my family, imperfect, damaged, but trying to make amends. The road to forgiveness would be long, and trust would take even longer to rebuild. But for the first time since discovering the wedding dress, I felt like healing might be possible. That night, back at Theo's apartment, I finally allowed myself to process everything. I cried until I had no tears left, mourning not just the family relationships that had been damaged but also the realization that Vincent still had the power to disrupt my life years after I'd left him. "What am I going to do about my apartment?" I asked Theo as we lay in bed, sleepless despite exhaustion. He was quiet for a moment before responding. "Move in with me. Not just temporarily. For real." I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. "Are you asking because of the situation or because you want to live together?" "Both," he admitted honestly. "I hate that this is happening to you, and I want you to be safe. But I've also been thinking about asking for weeks. I love you, Ellie. I love the life we could build together." His honesty was refreshing after years of Vincent's calculated manipulations. I leaned down and kissed him softly. "Yes," I said. "But let's be clear, this is a choice we're making together, not something Vincent forced on us." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I gave notice at my apartment building and began the process of moving in with Theo. My father made good on his promise to extract our family business from Vincent's control, taking out a large loan that would strain their finances but restore their independence. My sister started therapy to process her own complicated feelings about Vincent's manipulation. My mother's transformation was perhaps the most surprising. After seeing Vincent's true nature, she threw herself into researching emotional abuse, even joining a support group for family members of abuse survivors. Her apologies became more genuine as her understanding deepened. Vincent made one last attempt at contact, sending a lavish bouquet of flowers to my workplace with a card that read simply, "When you're ready to come home, I'll be waiting." I documented it as another violation and had my lawyer send a final cease and desist letter. The road ahead wasn't perfectly smooth. There were difficult family dinners where old patterns threatened to resurface. There were nights I woke up in a cold sweat, dreaming that Vincent had found a way back into my life. There were moments I caught my mother looking at my simpler lifestyle with Theo with something like regret in her eyes. But there was also healing. The damaged wedding dress that had started this whole ordeal? I finally took it out of its preservation box and, in a ceremony attended by Theo, my sister, and my parents, cut it into pieces that we burned in my father's backyard fire pit. It was theatrical, perhaps, but watching the fabric that had witnessed so much pain turn to ash felt powerfully symbolic. 6 months after the confrontation at my parents' house, Vincent moved across the country for a business opportunity. I'd like to say it was because of the restraining order or some personal growth on his part, but the reality was probably more mundane. The small business community in our town had largely turned against him after word spread about his behavior, making it difficult for him to operate effectively. With physical distance came emotional space to truly heal. My relationship with my family began to rebuild on healthier foundations. I'll never forget their betrayal, but I found a way to forgive that allows me to move forward without being consumed by resentment. As for Theo and me, living together has only strengthened our relationship. The contrast between his steady support and Vincent's manipulative control has helped me recognize what healthy love actually feels like. Third update. Thank you all for your continued support and the thoughtful comments on my last post. So many of you shared stories of your own family betrayals and recoveries, and they've given me strength during some really difficult moments. It's been about 4 months since my last update, and so much has changed. While Vincent has remained physically distant, the emotional aftermath of everything continued to ripple through my family in ways I didn't anticipate. The most significant development has been my relationship with my mother. After her initial awakening to Vincent's true nature, she threw herself into research about emotional abuse and manipulation. At first, I was skeptical. It felt like another one of her phases, like the time she became obsessed with clean eating or meditation. But over time, I noticed genuine changes in how she communicated with me. I've been thinking a lot about our relationship before Vincent, she said during a particularly honest lunch conversation. I think I always pushed you toward men I thought would give you security because that's what I valued most. My own mother struggled financially after my father left, and I swore my daughter would never experience that instability. But emotional stability matters too, I pointed out. She nodded, eyes welling with tears. I failed to teach you that. I failed to value it myself. Your father is a good man, but he's never been as dazzling as Vincent appeared to be. I think I was living vicariously through your marriage in some ways. That conversation was uncomfortable but healing. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, my mother was seeing me clearly rather than projecting her own desires onto me. My father has been working tirelessly to rebuild the family business without Vincent's investment. It's been challenging. They've had to downsize their house and cut back significantly on expenses, but there's a new dignity in his demeanor. He calls me regularly just to check in, something he never did before. I should have protected you, he said during one such call. From Vincent, and even from your mother's expectations sometimes. I stayed silent when I should have spoken up. You're speaking up now, I reminded him. My sister Natalie's journey has been the most complex. After providing statements to strengthen my restraining order against Vincent, she spiraled into a deep depression. She finally admitted in therapy that her relationship with Vincent had crossed more lines than she initially revealed to me. There had been secretive meetings, inappropriate physical contact, and emotional manipulation that left her deeply confused about her own culpability. I thought I was special, she confessed during a tearful sister night at my new place with Theo. That I understood him in a way you couldn't. Now I realize I was just another pawn in his game, a way to hurt you and keep control over the family. Her therapist suggested she might benefit from a support group specifically for people who had been manipulated by charismatic abusers. She's been attending weekly and says it's helping her understand how Vincent was able to exploit her vulnerabilities. As for me and Theo, living together has been better than I could have imagined. We've developed routines and inside jokes, learned each other's quirks, and built a home that feels safe and joyful. After the constant walking on eggshells feeling of my marriage to Vincent, the ease of being with Theo still sometimes catches me by surprise. Last month, we adopted a dog, a gentle rescue mutt we named Ripley. Having her has been healing in unexpected ways. Her uncomplicated love and the responsibility of caring for her together has cemented something between Theo and me. Everything was moving toward a new normal until 3 weeks ago, when the family gathering I'd been dreading finally arrived, my grandmother's 80th birthday celebration. It would be the first time the entire extended family would be together since everything happened with Vincent. My aunts, uncles, and cousins had heard different versions of the story depending on who they'd spoken to, and I was anxious about facing the inevitable questions and judgment. Theo offered to come with me, but I decided this was something I needed to face on my own. I'll be just a phone call away, he promised as he dropped me off at the event venue, Ripley sitting attentively in the back seat. The first hour wasn't as bad as I'd feared. Most relatives were focused on my grandmother rather than my family drama. But during dinner, my mother's sister, Aunt Patricia, cornered me at the dessert table. Such a shame about you and Vincent, she said, eyeing me over her champagne glass. He was at Caroline's charity gala last month, you know. With some gorgeous architect on his arm. He seemed very happy. I felt a familiar twist in my stomach but kept my expression neutral. I'm glad to hear he's moved on. I certainly have. Yes, I heard you're living with some teacher now? She said, making Theo's profession sound like a disappointment. Professor, I corrected. Of environmental engineering. And yes, we're very happy. She made a noncommittal noise. Well, dear, sometimes the second time around is more practical. Less exciting, perhaps, but steadier. Before I could respond, my mother appeared at my side. To my utter shock, she linked her arm through mine and fixed my aunt with a cool stare. Theo is a brilliant man who treats Ellie with respect and kindness, she said firmly. Which is worth more than all the charity galas in the world. Wouldn't you agree, Patricia? My aunt blinked in surprise, mumbled something about checking on the birthday cake, and hurried away. I turned to my mother, speechless. What? She said with a small smile. I'm not allowed to defend my daughter and her choices? I hugged her spontaneously, and after a moment's hesitation, she hugged me back just as tightly. The rest of the evening passed more comfortably, with my father and sister forming a protective circle around me whenever well-meaning but nosy relatives approached with questions about what really happened with that charming husband of yours. I was helping my grandmother open gifts when my cousin's wife approached with her phone out. Ellie, have you seen Vincent's Instagram today? My blood ran cold. I don't follow his social media. Well, he just announced his engagement to some woman he's apparently been dating for 2 months. Seems very sudden. She turned her phone to show me, and there he was, Vincent with his arm around a woman who looked unsettlingly like a younger version of me. The caption read, when you know, you know. Sometimes the universe gives you a second chance at happiness. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, hands shaking as I called Theo. He listened as I explained, then asked simply, do you want me to come get you? No, I said after taking a deep breath. I'm actually okay. It's just strange. And it was strange, but not in the way I expected. Looking at that photo, I felt no jealousy, no longing, not even much anger. What I felt most strongly was concern for the woman who didn't know what she was getting into and gratitude that I had escaped. When I returned to the party, my sister immediately approached me. I saw the post. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said, surprised to find it was true. "It's not my problem anymore." She studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "You really are over him." The revelation seemed to settle something for her too. Later that night, she pulled me aside again. "I need to tell you something. Vincent contacted me last week." My heart sank. "What? How?" "Email. He said he's engaged but can't stop thinking about me, that I was the one who got away." "Can you believe that?" "The same man who's publicly declaring his undying love to some other woman." "What did you do?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. She smiled grimly. Forwarded the entire email to his new fiancée with a note explaining our history and warning her to be careful. Then I blocked his email and reported it as a violation of the restraining order conditions that include contacting me about you. I hugged her tight. "I'm proud of you." As the party wound down, my mother approached with my grandmother in tow. "Your grandmother has something she wants to say to you," my mother said, gently guiding the elderly woman forward. My grandmother took my hands in hers. "I've been hearing stories about what happened with your ex-husband," she said, her voice wavering with age but her eyes sharp. "I want you to know that I faced something similar in my day, though we didn't have names for it back then." She went on to tell me a story I'd never heard before, about my grandfather's first cousin who had been abusive to his wife. How the family had initially closed ranks around him because of his status in the community, until my grandmother had stepped in and helped the wife escape to another state. "Sometimes family is wrong," she said firmly. "And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away, even when everyone is telling you to stay." I didn't speak up when I saw the warning signs with Vincent. I won't make that mistake again. I drove home from the party feeling lighter than I had in months. Something had shifted, not just within me, but within my entire family system. The protective silence that had allowed Vincent's behavior to go unchallenged had been broken. When I walked through the door, Theo and Ripley were waiting. As I recounted the events of the evening, Theo listened attentively, asking questions and offering gentle support as needed. When I finished, he took something from his pocket and placed it on the coffee table between us. It was a small velvet box. "I had a whole plan," he said with a nervous laugh. "Romantic dinner next weekend, speech I've been practicing for days. But watching you walk in just now, telling this story with such strength and clarity. I don't want to wait. You're the bravest person I know, Ellie. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you, if you'll have me." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring with a small emerald instead of a diamond. "It's not extravagant," he said, suddenly looking uncertain. "I know it's nothing like what Vincent." I pressed my fingers to his lips. "It's perfect. You're perfect." I said yes, of course. We celebrated quietly at home with takeout and a bottle of wine, Ripley curled contentedly at our feet. No grand gestures, no public spectacle, just authentic joy between two people who truly see and respect each other. The next morning, I called my parents to share the news. My mother surprised me again. "I'm so happy for you, sweetheart," she said, sounding genuinely delighted. "Theo is exactly the partner you deserve." My father got on the line, his voice gruff with emotion. "Does he make you feel safe, Ellie?" "Completely," I answered without hesitation. "Then that's all I need to know. Though I would like his parents' contact information, your mother is already talking about wedding planning." I laughed, realizing some things never change, but the foundation had shifted. My family was learning, growing, healing. The wedding is set for next spring, something small and intimate, completely different from my lavish first wedding. My sister will be my maid of honor, and we're incorporating some elements to honor the journey that brought us here, including a special role for my grandmother. As for Vincent, his new fiancée reached out to me last week through a carefully worded email. She had questions after receiving Natalie's warning. We met for coffee, and while I was careful not to simply bash Vincent, I was honest about my experience. I don't know if she'll leave him, that's her journey to make. But the cycle of silence has been broken. I still have moments of anxiety, nights when I wake up from nightmares about Vincent finding some new way to infiltrate my life. My therapist says that's normal and will likely diminish over time. But those moments are increasingly outnumbered by days filled with simple joy, authentic connection, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The wedding dress that started this whole saga? I've decided to donate the material to an artist friend who creates memorial quilts for survivors of domestic abuse. She's going to incorporate small pieces of it into her next project, transforming something that held such complex memories for me into part of the larger tapestry of healing and hope for others. Sometimes I think about the version of myself who first discovered that damaged dress in my mother's attic. How devastated she was, how betrayed she felt, how alone. I wish I could tell her that the betrayal, painful as it was, would ultimately lead to something better, a stronger sense of self, healthier family relationships, and a love built on genuine respect rather than control and fear. I guess that's what I'm trying to do by sharing this final update. If you're in the midst of your own betrayal story, whether it's family, romantic, or friendship, know that the path through is rarely clean or simple. There will be setbacks and new wounds along the way. But there can also be unexpected healing, surprising allies, and a strength you never knew you possessed. Final update. Thank you to everyone who has followed my story and offered support throughout this journey. Your comments, messages, and shared experiences have meant more to me than I can adequately express. Many of you asked for one final update after the wedding, so here it is. Yesterday, I married Theo in a small ceremony at a local botanical garden. The weather cooperated beautifully, warm spring sunshine with a gentle breeze that seemed to carry away the last lingering shadows of my past. I walked down the aisle to a string quartet playing a song Theo had written for me, my father proudly at my side. Getting to this day hasn't been without its challenges. About 2 months after my last update, Vincent made one final attempt to disrupt my life. His engagement had fallen apart, surprise, surprise, after his fiancée discovered he was still contacting not just my sister but also several other women. In his anger, he sent a barrage of emails to my entire family, my workplace, and even Theo's university department, filled with twisted versions of our history and bizarre accusations. It was a desperate move from someone losing control, and thankfully, most people saw it for what it was. My boss, who had met Vincent during our marriage and always seemed uncomfortable around him, called me into her office after receiving the email. "I don't need explanations," she said before I could speak. "Some men can't handle seeing their ex-partners happy and successful. Consider this matter closed." Theo's department had a similar reaction, with his department chair actually apologizing to him for having to deal with such unprofessional behavior. The restraining order was extended and strengthened after this incident, and Vincent finally seemed to get the message. The last I heard, he had moved abroad for work. My sister Natalie continued with therapy and has made tremendous progress in understanding how and why she was vulnerable to Vincent's manipulation. She started dating again recently, a kind, soft-spoken botanist she met through a friend, and it's been heartening to see her in a healthy relationship based on mutual respect. "I catch myself sometimes," she confessed during my bachelorette weekend, expecting drama or feeling like things aren't exciting enough. Then I remember that's the conditioning talking, not me. Steady and kind isn't boring, it's what love is supposed to feel like. My relationship with my mother continues to evolve in positive ways. She still occasionally slips into old patterns, particularly when she gets anxious, but now she catches herself or accepts gentle redirection. For my wedding, she initially pushed for a larger, more elaborate affair, but when I held firm on wanting something intimate, she surprised me by saying, "It's your day, Ellie. I want it to be what makes you happy." The wedding dress shopping experience was particularly meaningful. Instead of pushing me toward extravagant designer gowns as she had for my first wedding, my mother asked thoughtful questions about what would make me feel comfortable and beautiful. We found the perfect dress together, a simple, elegant sheath of ivory silk that couldn't have been more different from my first wedding's elaborate ball gown. "You look like yourself," she said when I tried it on, tears in her eyes. "Not like someone's idea of a bride, but like Ellie getting married. That's how it should be." My father has become an unexpected source of wisdom throughout the wedding planning process. One evening, as we discussed the ceremony, he shared something that stayed with me. "When you married Vincent," he said carefully, "I had this unsettled feeling I couldn't name. I told myself it was normal father of the bride jitters. Now I know it was my instinct trying to warn me that something wasn't right. Today, when I think about you marrying Theo, all I feel is peace." The ceremony itself was everything I had hoped for, meaningful without being overwrought, personal without being self-indulgent. We wrote our own vows, making promises that acknowledged the complex journey that brought us together while looking hopefully toward our future. My grandmother, now 81, performed a special blessing that incorporated elements from her own marriage of 60 years. My sister stood proudly as my maid of honor, her steady presence a testament to how far we've both come. One of the most powerful moments came during the reception when my father gave his toast. He started conventionally enough, welcoming Theo to the family and sharing anecdotes about my childhood. Then his voice grew serious. "I failed my daughter once," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I put comfort in appearances above her well-being. I won't make that mistake again. Theo, I'm entrusting you with my daughter's heart, but I want you to know that her family stands behind her now, completely and without reservation. We've learned the hard way what truly matters." There wasn't a dry eye in the place, including mine. Theo squeezed my hand under the table as my father continued. "To Ellie and Theo, whose relationship has taught our entire family what real love looks like. May you continue to grow together in strength, honesty, and joy." After the toasts and dinner, as the small band played and our guests danced, my mother pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small package wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a small but exquisite emerald butterfly. "It reminded me of you," she explained. "The transformation you've undergone these past few years. Watching you emerge from everything that happened with such grace and strength. It's been remarkable." I fastened the bracelet around my wrist, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift and the symbolism behind it. "Thank you, Mom. For this and for everything else. For learning and growing with me." She smiled, her eyes suspiciously bright. "I should be thanking you. You taught me what courage looks like." The night continued with dancing, laughter, and the kind of genuine joy that can't be manufactured or performed. Theo and I left amid a shower of lavender buds, heading to a cozy bed and breakfast nearby before our honeymoon trip next week. This morning, as I sat on the porch of the B&B watching the sunrise with my new husband, I reflected on the incredible journey of these past few years. From the discovery of that damaged wedding dress to this new beginning, the path has been neither straight nor easy. There have been betrayals and revelations, setbacks and breakthroughs, tears and healing. Vincent still occupies space in my history, but he no longer has power over my present or future. My family, once complicit in his manipulation, has transformed alongside me. And most importantly, I've discovered my own capacity for growth, forgiveness, and joy. For those who have followed my story from the beginning, thank you for witnessing this journey. To those in the midst of your own struggles with family betrayal or toxic relationships, hold on to hope. The road to healing is rarely linear, and there will be days when the weight feels unbearable. But trust in your own strength, seek support where you can find it, and know that while some relationships may be irreparably damaged, others can transform in ways you never imagined possible. As for me, I'm closing this chapter of my life with gratitude and looking forward to writing the next one, not as a victim or a survivor, but simply as myself, surrounded by people who love me for exactly who I am. AITA? In the end, I don't think I ever was. I was just someone learning how to honor my own truth, even when it was inconvenient for others. And in doing so, I found my way home to myself.